Your parents probably told you the same thing mine did. Save your money. Put it in the bank. Don't touch it. And you listened because they sounded so certain, so convinced that a growing bank balance was the foundation of a stable life. You carried that advice into adulthood like a family heirloom, never questioning whether it still made sense in a world your parents never could have predicted. You opened a checking account, started depositing paychecks, and watched the number climb with quiet pride. Every $1,000 felt like another brick in the wall between you and financial disaster. What nobody mentioned is that the wall you've been building has cracks in it, and money leaks through them every single day. The first thing worth understanding is that your bank is not on your side. Banks are businesses, and their primary product is your money. When you deposit your paycheck, the bank doesn't lock it in a vault and wait for you to come back. It lends your money out immediately to home buyers, to businesses, to credit card holders, at interest rates ranging from 6% to 25% or higher. Your deposits fuel a lending machine that generates billions in profit every quarter. In return for using your money as their raw material, most banks pay you 7% interest annually on a $15,000 balance. That works out to roughly $10 a year. Meanwhile, the bank might earn hundreds or even thousands of dollars lending out those same funds. You are essentially giving a corporation an interest-free loan and thanking them for the privilege. The relationship is almost entirely one-sided, and it has been designed that way on purpose. Banks spend enormous amounts on marketing that frames checking accounts as safe, reliable, responsible. They want you to feel good about parking money with them because your deposits are their inventory. The more you store, the more they earn. The less you question, the better their margins. The second thing most people miss is that cash hoarding is often an emotional decision disguised as a financial one. Somewhere along the way, you picked a number that feels safe. Maybe it's $10,000, maybe $20,000. Maybe you don't even have a specific number. You just know that when the balance dips below a certain point, anxiety kicks in, and when it rises above that point, the anxiety fades. That threshold has almost nothing to do with math. It's a feeling shaped by your childhood, your parents' relationship with money, the stories you absorbed about what it means to be financially secure. Entire generations learned to hoard cash because their grandparents lived through periods when banks literally failed overnight and took everyone's savings with them. That fear embedded itself in family culture and got passed down like an unspoken rule. The problem is that the financial world of 2026 looks nothing like the world that created those fears. Holding excessive cash today doesn't protect you from the dangers your grandparents faced. It exposes you to a completely different set of dangers they never had to think about. The third thing that changes how you see your money is understanding what economists call opportunity cost, not as an abstract concept, but as a concrete alternate life. Every dollar sitting idle in your checking account is a dollar that could have been somewhere else doing something productive. That sounds theoretical until you map it onto real decisions. Take $10,000 sitting in checking for 5 years in a diversified index fund averaging 10% annual returns. That money grows to roughly $24,000. The $9,000 difference isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It's a semester of your child's education. It's 3 months of mortgage payments during a career transition. It's the seed money for a business you've been thinking about for years. When people talk about the cost of keeping too much cash, they usually frame it as lost interest, a few percentage points here and there. But the real cost is measured in the options you never had, because your money was doing nothing when it could have been compounding. Over a decade, the gap between idle cash and invested capital becomes a down payment on a house. Over 2 decades, it becomes the difference between retiring at 60 and retiring at 67. Over a lifetime, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars you earned but never allowed to multiply. The money was always yours. The growth it could have generated was always available. You just left it on the table because nobody told you to pick it up. The fourth thing worth confronting is that your sense of risk is probably inverted. Most people believe that keeping money in a bank account is the safe choice, and investing it is the risky one. This feels intuitively correct. Your bank balance doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't drop 15% on a bad Tuesday because a tech company missed earnings expectations. It just sits there, stable and predictable, and that stability feels like safety. But stability and safety are not the same thing. A checking account balance is stable in nominal terms, meaning the number doesn't change. But in real terms, meaning what that number can actually buy, your balance declines every single year. Inflation at 4% means your purchasing power drops by roughly a quarter over a decade. You start with $10,000 that can buy $10,000 worth of goods. 10 years later, that same $10,000 buys closer to $700–800 worth of goods. The number stayed the same. The value did not. Now compare that to the stock market. Yes, investments fluctuate. Some years they drop 20%. Other years they gain 30%. The ride is bumpy, and watching your portfolio decline during a correction feels genuinely uncomfortable. But over every 20-year period, in modern market history, stocks have delivered positive returns. Not sometimes, every single time. The short-term volatility that scares people away from investing is actually the price of admission for long-term wealth building. You pay for higher returns with temporary discomfort. And the payment is always worth it if your timeline is long enough. Cash in a checking account offers the opposite deal. You get emotional comfort in exchange for guaranteed long-term loss. That's not safety. That's paying a premium to feel calm while your wealth slowly erodes. The fifth thing that traps people is the illusion that they need instant access to all of their money at all times. When you ask someone why they keep $30,000 in checking, the answer almost always involves the phrase just in case. Just in case the car breaks down. Just in case there's a medical emergency. Just in case something happens. The fear is understandable, but the math doesn't support it. Think about the last genuine financial emergency you experienced. How much did it actually cost? For most people, unexpected expenses fall in the range of $500 to $5,000. A car repair, an emergency room copay, an appliance replacement. These are real and stressful, but they don't require $30,000 of instantly accessible cash. They require a properly sized emergency fund, which for most households means somewhere between $6,000 and $18,000, depending on monthly obligations and risk factors. Everything beyond that amount is not emergency preparedness. It's excess cash earning nearly nothing. And here's what most people don't realize about accessibility. A high-yield savings account lets you transfer money to checking within 1 to 2 business days. A brokerage account can liquidate investments and deliver cash within 3 to 5 days. For the vast majority of emergencies, you don't need money in the next 5 minutes. You need it within the next few days. And that window is more than enough for money stored in higher-yielding accounts. The idea that you need tens of thousands of dollars available at the tap of a debit card is a mental model left over from a time before electronic transfers, before instant payments, before the infrastructure that now moves money almost as fast as you can spend it. Updating that mental model is one of the most profitable mindset shifts you can make. The sixth thing working against you is that cash with no job description eventually gets spent on things that don't matter. There's a well-documented phenomenon in behavioral economics where unstructured money disappears faster than designated money. When every dollar in your account has the same label, which is no label at all, your brain treats the entire balance as one pool of available resources. A $200 impulse purchase against a $20,000 balance feels insignificant, barely a ripple. But multiply those insignificant purchases across weeks and months, and the ripples become a current that pulls your balance down in ways you never consciously chose. People who assign roles to their money spend less overall, not because they have more discipline, but because the structure itself changes how their brain processes spending decisions. When your checking account holds exactly what you need for this month's bills and discretionary spending, every purchase registers at its true proportion. That same $200 impulse buy against a $2,000 spending balance suddenly feels like what it actually is, 10% of your monthly budget. The framing changes the decision without requiring any extra willpower. Wealthy people figured this out a long time ago. Their money moves through systems designed to separate it by purpose before they ever see a combined total. Income arrives and immediately splits into tax obligations, investment contributions, operating expenses, and discretionary spending. No single account holds everything, which means no single balance creates the illusion of abundance. You can build the same architecture regardless of your income level. It just requires setting up the transfers once. The seventh thing most people overlook entirely is that waiting to invest has a cost that compounds just as powerfully as investing early does. Every year you delay moving excess cash into investments, you lose not just that year's potential returns, but every year of compounding those returns would have generated. A single year of procrastination on a $10,000 investment doesn't cost you $1,000 in missed returns. It costs you $1,000 plus every dollar that $1,000 would have generated over the next 10, 20, 30 years. At 10% average annual returns, delaying a $10,000 investment by just 5 years costs you roughly $16,000 over a 30-year horizon. That's $16,000 lost not because the market performed badly, not because you made a poor investment choice, but simply because you waited. Time is the single most powerful variable in wealth building, and it's the only one you can never get back. You can always earn more money. You can always adjust your investment strategy. You can always cut expenses, but you cannot recover lost years. of compound growth. Every month, your excess cash sits in a checking account. As a month of compounding, you've permanently forfeited. So what does an intelligent structure actually look like in practice? Start by being honest about your actual monthly expenses. Not the lifestyle you're accustomed to, but the bare minimum it costs to keep your life functioning. Housing, food, transportation, utilities, insurance, minimum debt payments. Total those up and multiply by 4 to 6 months. That's your emergency fund, and it belongs in a high-yield savings account paying 4% or better. Dozens of online banks offer these rates right now with no fees, no minimums, and transfers that take a day or two at most. Next, look at what's left over in your accounts beyond that emergency fund. If you have a major purchase planned within 5 years, a house, a car, a wedding, keep that money in high-yield savings, or short-term certificates of deposit where it earns real interest without market risk. For everything else, and this is the part that changes your financial trajectory permanently, open a brokerage account and invest in broad market index funds. If your employer offers a retirement plan with matching contributions, fund that first because a company match is free money. Then consider tax-advantaged accounts like a Roth IRA, where your investments grow and can eventually be withdrawn without owing taxes on the gains. Then use a standard brokerage account for anything beyond those contribution limits. The most critical step is automation. Set up your paycheck to split automatically so money flows into the right accounts before you ever see it consolidated in one place. Your checking account receives only what you need for this month's spending. Everything else routes directly to savings and investments without your involvement. This removes the temptation to overthink, to wait for the right moment, to tell yourself you'll invest next month. The system handles it, and you go on living your life. Here is what it all comes down to. The financial habits most people consider responsible: keeping a large bank balance, avoiding the stock market, maintaining easy access to all their money, are actually the habits that guarantee they'll build less wealth over their lifetime. These habits feel safe because they're familiar, because your parents endorse them, because the number in your checking account never turns red. But feelings and math operate on different frequencies. And when it comes to building a financial future, math wins every time. Your bank account should be a transit station, not a storage facility. Money passes through it on its way to places where it can grow. It stops long enough to cover your bills and your daily life, then moves on to high-yield savings, to index funds, to retirement accounts, to anywhere that respects the value of every dollar you work to earn. You already did the hard part. You showed up, you worked, you earned the money. Now give that money a job that matches the effort you put into earning it. Set up the transfers, open the accounts, automate the process, and let compound growth do the one thing your checking account never will: build you a future where your money works as hard as you always have.